In our headlines on this Thursday afternoon, August 11th. The torrential rain is moving south from the greater capital region with heavy downpour in the forecast for the Chungcheong-do Provinces. Here in the metropolitan region, at least 11 people have been killed. President Yoon is urging for prompt relief efforts to ease the plight of people bearing the brunt of the recent record rainfall. He's also calling for price stability ahead of the Chuseok holiday. Samsung Electronics has made public its latest high-end foldables, which are lighter and longer lasting, but being offered at the same prices. All this in a bid to seal its lead in an expanding market. The torrential rain is moving away from the greater Seoul area to the central and southern parts of the country. Authorities are calling on people to take proper shelter and to avoid low-lying areas prone to flooding. Meanwhile, here in the capital region, at least 11 people have lost their lives. Our Lee-Hoo starts us off.
South Korea's central Chungcheong-do Provinces are bracing for heavy downpours as the powerful rain front that slammed Seoul and its surrounding areas for the last 2 days moves southward. According to Korea Meteorological Administration, as of 9 a.m. Thursday morning, 30 to 50 millimeters of rain was falling per hour in parts of Chungcheong-do and Jeollabuk-do provinces. The western coast of Jeollabuk-do province particularly was seeing heavier rainfall of 50 to 100 millimeters per hour. Over the next few days, it's expected that over 300 millimeters of rain will hit the Chungcheong-do region. And authorities are warning residents to be aware of flooding, especially around the stream in Cheongju City. Heavy rain warnings have been issued for regions in Chungcheong-do, Jeollabuk-do, and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces. While the rainfall will gradually subside in many parts of the greater Seoul area, up to 80 millimeters of rain is still expected through Friday morning. As of 6 a.m. Thursday Korea time, the death toll from adverse weather in Seoul, Gyeonggi-do, and Gangwon-do provinces reached 11, with 8 still missing. Nationwide, over 3,700 homes and buildings were flooded, and over 5,200 people were displaced from their homes and have taken temporary shelter. Operation of several subway lines in Seoul, along with riverside parking lots, were suspended over safety concerns. And already in Chungcheong-buk-do province, roads have been blocked and buildings are experiencing power outages due to flooding. The Interior Ministry have also issued landslide warnings around the country, while there have been 25 landslides due to the rain. Government officials have been visiting sites across the country to inspect the extent of the damage and are supplying daily necessities to people who are forced to evacuate from their homes. Seoul city government plans to roll out 30 billion Korean won, or around $23 million in funding to restore public facilities and provide quarantine equipment to prevent the spread of infectious diseases. Lee-Hoo, Arirang News.
And President Yoon has reiterated calls for proper relief and compensation efforts in response to rain-related losses. Do take a listen.
피해가 큰 지역에 대해 피해 보상, 인명 피해 보상, 이재민 구호, 또 소상공인 지원 등 모든 행정력을 동원해서 추석 전에 마무리 짓고 아울러서 국민들께서 피부로 느낄 수 있도록 명절 장바구니 물가를 잡아야 할 것입니다.
These remarks were made during the 5th emergency meeting on economic affairs on this Thursday, during which he sat down with experts, entrepreneurs and relevant members of his cabinet to touch upon the importance of supporting vulnerable groups and stabilizing prices ahead of the Chuseok holiday, which falls in early September this year and comes on the heels of the recent record rainfall. President Yoon has urged the government to supply the market with high-demand products for the holiday, as well as plenty of discount coupons. And in response to the President's request, the Finance Ministry has shared measures aimed at stabilizing prices ahead of the Chuseok holiday. High-demand Chuseok items such as cabbage and beef will be released from government reserves, while tariffs will be slashed on imported livestock products. Plans are also in place to distribute nearly $50 million worth of coupons, which consumers can use for discounts of up to 50% on certain food items. Now, small businesses and merchants will receive around $33 billion in the form of special financial support. On the pandemic front, health authorities here have announced over 137,000 new COVID-19 infections on this Thursday. The latest daily tally is a slight decline from the day prior, but authorities warn the tally is likely to rise as high as 200,000 in mid-August. Meanwhile, 59 people lost their lives to the virus over the past 24 hours, and 418 patients remain in critical care. Authorities have also reaffirmed their intentions to bolster prevention efforts at high-risk venues, including long-term healthcare facilities. Across the border, North Korea's Kim Jong-un has declared victory against COVID-19, and his sister is reportedly blaming her country's outbreak on South Korea. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Han Sung-woo explains.
3 months after admitting it had an outbreak, North Korea has declared victory in its battle against COVID-19. The Korean Central News Agency reported on Thursday that Kim Jong-un gave a speech the day before at a mass meeting on antivirus measures, where he, quote, solemnly declared the victory in the maximum emergency anti-epidemic campaign for exterminating the novel coronavirus. Kim also revealed the regime would lower its so-called maximum virus prevention system back to a normal level, but cautioned against complacency, saying that the global health crisis is still ongoing in neighboring countries, and that it's too early to completely lift curbs, including border lockdowns. In a surprise move, his sister Kim Yo-jong also spoke during the meeting and blamed the spread of the virus in the north on alien objects and anti-Pyongyang leaflets flown in on balloons from activists in South Korea. Calling them crimes against humanity, she reportedly warned of intense retaliations, even threatening to wipe out South Korean authorities should the practice continue. Kim also said her brother himself had suffered from fever symptoms, saying that even though the leader was, quote, seriously ill with a high fever, he could not lie down for a moment thinking about the people he had to take care of. Kim Yo-jong's appearance reportedly marked the first time her speech on an official platform has been made public on state media. Pyongyang's victory declaration comes amid an extremely low fatality rate of 74 reported deaths, despite no known rollout of vaccines, leading observers to widely question its validity. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the foreign ministries of Seoul and Beijing are engaged in a war of words, clashing over the clarity of comments exchanged between their top officials back on Tuesday in Qingdao. Our foreign ministry correspondent Min Soo-kyun has details.
South Korea's foreign ministry has expressed discontent over China's latest remarks on THAAD, the U.S. missile defense system. The ministry on Wednesday reiterated South Korea's position, saying THAAD was a means of self-defense against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. It also stressed that THAAD cannot be a topic of consultation as it's a matter of national security. In fact, the ministry said that if the issue were to be raised constantly, it would become an obstacle to their bilateral ties. The comments come just hours after Beijing claimed that Seoul had officially promised to restrict its THAAD operation. Earlier in the day, a Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson said that the South Korean government had vowed to pursue a three-nose policy, along with a pledge to limit the operation of the THAAD battery that's already in place. The spokesperson also went on to say that the deployment of THAAD in South Korea harmed its security interests.
The U.S.'s deployment of THAAD in South Korea clearly undermines China's strategic security interests. China has expressed its concerns to Korea on multiple occasions, and the South Korean government has accordingly made public its commitments to the three-nose, one-limit policy. China attaches importance to this position.
The three-nose policy carried out by South Korea's former administration says no to deploying additional THAAD anti-missile system in Korea, no to participating in the U.S.-led missile defense network, and no to taking part in the trilateral military alliance with the U.S. and Japan. China wants the current Yoon administration to stay committed to the policy, but the South Korean government says it was never a formal agreement or promise made between the two. The latest remarks from both sides show signs of a diplomatic row brewing between the countries just a day after the top diplomats of South Korea and China held bilateral talks. Min Soo-kyun, Arirang News.
Right, and that ends part 1 of the Daily Report. We'll return with part 2 in a few minutes. Stay with us.
Share South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduce a Korean New Year. A Korean survivor of Japan's wartime sex slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis and pledged to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
Protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang, what matters?
On the grind, on the go. 뜻대로 되지 않아도 마음이 계속 가는 대로 어디까지 갈 수 있을지는 신밖에 몰라. Yeah, 나도 인간이라 의심될 때 있지 아주 가끔. Yeah, 뭐 멘트 다시 잡고 yeah, hustle day and night. 이 섹스 가끔해도 나는 지금 돌아봐. 믿어 끝나기 전에 계속 도전해. Yeah, we on fire. 아직도 넌 눈치만 보고 있어. 아무도 몰라 발 딛기 직전. 왜 아직 기적이라고 믿어. 매 순간에 기회라고 그 네거티비티 당장 뒤집어버려. 6번 넘어져도 chill. 난 못 먹어도 기억 하늘 위로 다 믿고 비가 와도 웃을 수 있게 뒤에서 말했고도 내 두 발로 딱 설 수 있게 turn 뒤집어 안 될 거란 생각은 뒤로 언제나 네 자신을 믿어 끝나기 전에 계속 도전해. Yeah, we on fire. I feel so good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Forever.
Welcome back. South Korea's daily COVID-19 tally has been hovering above the 100,000 mark amid this latest rebound in infections. And today, we revisit efforts to address the pandemic with a panel of health experts. I have Professor Chuseok from Hallym University, who is also heading the National Infectious Disease Consulting Committee. Professor Chung, welcome back.
Good afternoon.
I also have Professor Howard Lee from Seoul National University. Professor Lee, it's a pleasure again.
Thank you for having me back.
Right, Professor Chung, we'll start with you then. Health authorities have spoken about keeping their strategy focused on addressing critical cases to prevent fatalities. What are your thoughts on their efforts thus far?
Well, government is heading for a right direction because if you can decrease the critical cases, then automatically you can decrease the fatality cases. So there are some high-risk groups who can easily get COVID-19 and get into critical cases. Those are aged 60 and over, and regardless of age, who have chronic diseases or immune compromised status. So there are some measures to prevent those high-risk groups get into a critically ill status and get into fatal cases. The first of all, the fourth vaccination. So almost all high-risk group had already got a third vaccination, and we need a fourth vaccination for them because that kind of fourth, in other words, a second booster can reduce the mortality and critically ill cases by 50%. And another armament is antiviral agent, so-called Paxlovid, Lagevrio, and Remdesivir. If you can put those agents as early as possible, you can reduce again by the 50% of mortality cases. And on top of that, the government is preparing a sufficient number of emergency room and ICUs. So by doing that, I hope that we can reduce the case fatalities on high-risk group, and as a result, you can see a very low case fatality rate with COVID-19.
Right. And Professor Lee, staying with the government's COVID-19 strategy, approval has been granted to a new COVID-19 medication called Evusheld. Could you tell us a bit more about this particular I think it's a preventive medication, right?
That's true. Evu or Evusheld is an interesting pre-exposure prophylaxis. So this is not for treatment, but for prevention. It contains two long-acting monoclonal antibodies targeting at the spike protein of the COVID-19 virus, which is critical for the virus to enter into human cells. Many people, like Sunny, you and myself, do not need Evusheld. We need vaccines instead. But there are some people who need Evusheld. For those who are not expected to mount an adequate amount of immune response, those people are likely to have some kind of immune suppressive medications, or they underwent some kind of immune compromised situations. Or somebody who having showing some kind of hypersensitivity reaction to the vaccine. Evusheld is needed for those kind of people. Evusheld, however, is contraindicated or should not be used for those who were allergic to any component of Evusheld, or it can show some kind of cross-high sensitivity with COVID-19 vaccine. Also, it is injected intramuscularly, so if you have blood clotting sort of disease, and then you are not indicated for that. And also, the study shows that if you are on Evusheld, and also you have risk for cardiac diseases, cardiovascular outcomes are much higher. So in that case, you shouldn't receive Evusheld.
Right, I see. And Professor Jong, on the topic of medication, do we have an adequate supply of COVID-19 treatment amid this latest surge in transmissions? And with regard to treatment about using Paxlovid, has South Korea witnessed any rebound cases following this particular regimen, that is Paxlovid?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. We have 1 million doses already in Korea, and about 300,000 are already consumed. And we are going to have another 1 million doses contracted, and they'll be coming by the end of this year or early next year. So, so far I think it's sufficient, but if you have a large research in coming fall or winter, then we have to change the plan. Regarding Paxlovid rebound, it's quite interesting one. It's not a new one. Rebound means the rebounding of a virus and or rebounding of a symptom. So it isn't, the Pfizer says it's the prevalence of 1 to 2% of whole population. And it was found from the beginning of a clinical trial. So at the clinical trial, that's so. In the Paxlovid group and the placebo group, the same amount of rebound was found, 1 to 2% of rebound, either a virus or a symptom. And still we are seeing 1 to 2% of that kind of rebound in the United States. But luckily, here in Korea, we already consumed nearly 300,000 Paxlovid here, but we do not see any kind of rebound. But I don't think it's a bad one. This is a kind of a natural one because virus comes and goes during a certain period, and symptom comes and goes during a certain period. I don't think it's a big deal.
Right, it's not anything for us to worry about too much then.
Right.
Professor Lee, prior to this latest wave of COVID-19 here, there was much talk about Omicron-tailored vaccines being available very soon. What is the latest on that front?
Well, a couple of days ago, Pfizer and BNT announced that a Omicron-targeted or Omicron-tailored vaccine is going to be available as soon as early October this year. And they are embarking on a new clinical trial for a new vaccine targeted Omicron variants. It includes both the old one, BA1, and the new one, BA4 and 5. So hopefully by the end of September, they will get some clinical data. And actually, Moderna is following the same route of developing bivalent vaccine. And according, if I'm not seriously mistaken, Pfizer and BNT has completed a trial with the monovalent against Omicron BA1 vaccine trial, and then they have submitted the data to the regulatory agency. So pending approval by the FDA and EMA, Pfizer, Moderna will be able to roll out the Omicron targeted or tailored, if you will, vaccines by the fourth quarter as early as October this year.
Right. Meanwhile, Professor Jong, reinfection appears to be rampant amid the resurgence of COVID-19. Now, that being said, how common is reinfection here on the local front?
From the beginning of a pandemic so far, the overall reinfection rate is still lower than 1%. It's 1.79%, very low. But these days, last week, KDCA reported the reinfection rate is 5.4%. It's quite increasing. We know the reason why, because the BA5 is evading immunity, which already made by a BA1 or a previous Delta. And if you break down the reinfected people, you can find that half of the reinfected people are aged below 18, the younger ones. The reason is because quite many of those group had not got a vaccination, because below 5 years old, you don't have any vaccine available. And between 5 and 17, many students and children didn't get a vaccine. So another finding is, regardless of age, if you do not have a vaccine, if you didn't get vaccinated, then you have a better chance of a reinfection. So vaccine is again the most important in preventing reinfection. But unfortunately, these days we are seeing a mild increase of gradual increase of reinfection, and maybe like other developed countries, maybe we'll see a 10% or maybe 20%. In other countries, since the reinfection rate is very high.
Is there a way of dealing with that particular reality then? Should we be encouraging more of our younger children to get vaccinations then?
Yes, particularly very high-risk patients who are obese, who have a chronic disease like diabetes, and chronic kidney disease, they should get vaccinated.
Right, I see. Professor Lee, where does South Korea stand in terms of developing perhaps a treatment option for COVID-19?
As of today, there is only one treatment option available, approved by the regulatory agency in South Korea, Rakiron by Celltrion. But the role of Rakiron in the treatment of COVID-19 has vanished almost since it did not show efficacy against the Omicron variants. That said, however, another Korean company is currently developing an antiviral treatment in collaboration with a Japanese company, Shionogi, and the name of the drug is Jocova, and Jocova is basically working according to the same by the same mechanism of action as Pfizer's Paxlovid. It's basically it's a protease inhibitor. That said, however, the first attempt to get that drug approved or emergency use authorized by the Japanese government has failed. So the jury is still out.
I see. And given the current state of affairs, Professor Lee, I understand this might be a tricky question, but what do you believe is more productive, the development of treatment options or that of vaccines?
Well, that's a very tough question to answer. Both are important, but if I have to choose just one, I would say vaccine development at this point is treatment development is slightly more productive at this time of a moment. The reason is because vaccine has to be specific to the target antigen. But as we have witnessed so far, the virus has been evolving continuously by changing its target antigen. So vaccine development in this kind of situation is a perpetual game. And I don't think that kind of catch-up is going to work forever.
Right, I see. And Professor Jong, here's another tricky question for you then. When do you predict will South Korea's current wave peak?
Well, several mathematical models anticipated it by the mid of August, and by the end of August, they will see a peak. The volume will be about 150,000 to 200,000. But it's just kind of guess. Nobody knows because we are still chasing a BA 2.75, and still the BA5 is increasing, and not comprising 100%. So nobody knows. But I don't think the volume is the figure is important, but the more important is the severity. Even though you have more number, if you have a lower severity, lower case fatality, then you cannot worry too much about that. So I think the severity is more important than the plain number.
Right. And Professor Jung, do you expect another resurgence in the winter?
Sure. If you recollect the previous winter, we had a big surge last winter, and 2 years ago we had the third wave again. So because the COVID-19 virus is a respiratory virus, and respiratory viruses are proliferating during winter time, it's a fact. And on top of that, we have waning immunity among whole population. The fourth vaccine, once I emphasized, it began as early as end of February. And by April, the 60 and over started the fourth vaccination. In July, government pushed some disabled people and the people who are living in long-term care facilities. So altogether, they will lose the immunity by the November or late early winter. So in that case, most people will have a lower immunity. And we had the Omicron surge at peak March. And if you have immunity by natural immunity, which is got by infection, it only lasts 4 or 6 months. So again, by the October and November, the infected people who have a natural immunity will lose immunity. So the lowest immunity will be coming in the late fall or early winter. So that's why I'm emphasizing getting a vaccination, the new kind of bivalent vaccine as early as possible, maybe early October or late November. Then we can do better with that kind of vaccine.
Right. And in the meantime then, Professor Lee, the academic arena here in the country is opening its doors this month. What do you propose to ensure safety at schools?
The time of peak resurgence is expected to coincide with the time of school reopening at the end of this month, August. As Professor Jong has already mentioned, what makes the matter more worrisome is the fact that only less than 1% of children under 12 have been vaccinated. I think the recent statistic, as Professor already mentioned, almost 1/3 of reinfected cases happened in children under 17. So, having said that, I think we have to think about the way that we can encourage the parents to bring their kids to the clinic for vaccination. And this is kind of a tricky thing. And more or less, it is something that needs to be approached by a behavioral sort of aspect of practice. That is something that we need to seriously consider, and that has been taken into account. But in the meantime, students suspicious of any COVID-19 symptoms have get their rapid antigen test available, and also wearing a face mask is a mandate, of course.
Right, within the classrooms, of course.
Yeah.
Professor Jong, speaking to the local media this week, you claimed an endemic phase of COVID-19 will be possible if we better protect our vulnerable groups. Would you like to take this opportunity to elaborate?
Well, yeah. I anticipated a stable endemic condition maybe as early as next spring. Because endemic means you can anticipate, you can predict the amount of the volume of infection, and the infection will be stably controlled, and etc. If we are doing better with the high-risk groups, I mean, the high-risk group comprises over 90% of all fatality. And people who are living in long-term care facilities like nursing home, nursing hospitals, psychiatric institute, and etc., they are comprising 1/3 of mortality cases. So if you focus on those high-risk people and diagnose as early as possible and get them medicated with Paxlovid, Lagevrio, and etc. as early as possible, then you can reduce the mortality. And also with fourth vaccination and consecutive vaccination. So you can reduce mortality by 50% with the fourth vaccine or fifth vaccine, probably. And you can reduce another 50% of mortality by antiviral agent. Then you might see a total case fatality nearly approaching influenza. The influenza case fatality is 0.02% to 0.03%. These days we are seeing a 0.04% of COVID-19 fatality these days. So if you have the case fatality, then you can make 0.02%, which is very similar to influenza. Then if you have, we feel very safe with that kind of a figure. It's like influenza. You can get diagnosed as early as possible. If you are very ill, you can get an antiviral agent. So in that case, most people live their ordinary lives without worrying too much about COVID-19.
Would that also mean no face masks indoors?
Maybe next spring.
Right, I see. And beyond COVID-19, Professor Lee, the recent record rainfall here in the country has triggered much concerns about waterborne diseases. Could you tell us more about them and ways to prevent ourselves from them?
Well, high humidity can cause several diseases to occur or aggravate the symptoms of existing diseases. It is because humidity provides a condition where the microorganisms such as fungus and bacteria can grow faster and wilder. The good example is athlete's foot or the ringworm disease of the foot. But that's not the only disease that can be aggravated or aggravated by high humidity. Asthma, atopy, allergic dermatitis can be also aggravated. And also high humidity in the high humid condition, microorganisms can enter more easily into the subground water, and that's why we have to worry about more foodborne or waterborne infection at this point.
Right, so we need to be very careful then.
Yeah.
All right, Professor Lee, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. And Professor Jong, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Samsung Electronics has launched its new foldable Galaxy phones, touting better cameras and faster processors. What remains unchanged, though, are the price tags. Here's our Finance Ministry correspondent, Om Ji-young.
the most durable and most powerful Galaxy foldables yet. This is how Samsung Electronics is describing its latest line of Galaxy folding smartphones. At its annual Unpacked event on Thursday Korea time, Samsung unveiled its 4th generation Galaxy Flip and Fold series, wooing buyers around the world. A representative says its new offerings will push foldables from their current position in a niche part of the smartphone market to being a mainstream hit.
Last year alone, almost 10 million people opened a foldable. Market growth has tripled. Just 3 years ago, this category did not even exist. Now we are leading it into the mainstream. Today, we are proud to introduce the 4th generation of Samsung Galaxy foldables, the best we have ever created.
Users of the latest Galaxy Z Flip 4, a small shell-like square that opens up to a 6.7-inch screen, will be able to make calls and reply to texts without opening the phone and will be able to take selfies in portrait mode. Also, the device has gotten even slimmer.
It has more solid modeling, a smaller hinge, and bolder camera housing compared to previous models. And it has an aesthetic contrast between the matte back glass and the glossier metal frame, which makes it especially stylish.
It also brings higher quality photos and videos with upgraded cameras and a sensor that is 65% brighter than its predecessor. On top of that, it comes with a bigger battery and super fast charging, powering the phone's battery to 50% in 30 minutes. Another highlight of the Unpacked event, the new Galaxy Z Fold 4, a tablet-like smartphone that opens like a book, which has also gotten lighter with a slimmer hinge. It comes with a 45% more durable main display, upgraded cameras both on the back and under the display.
Underneath this immersive display, we're bringing you an improved under-display camera with advanced image processing technology. This camera comes inside a phone that offers more flexibility, an enhanced multitasking experience, and an absolutely amazing screen.
With all these new features and despite soaring costs of production and shipping, Samsung has managed to keep price tags steady at the same levels as last year. Retail prices start at $999 for the Galaxy Z Flip 4 and $1,799 for the Galaxy Z Fold 4. And Samsung's latest products can already be pre-ordered from the company's webpage, with shipping starting from August 26th in selected countries. 엄지영, Arirang News.
Climate change has been raising the frequency and severity of weather-related disasters, which in turn have been translating to substantial economic losses. Our Choi Min-jung has more on this dire portrait.
Every year, natural disasters like floods, earthquakes, and storms lead to significant economic losses. According to global reinsurance firm Munich Re, natural disasters in the first half of 2022 caused overall losses of $65 billion worldwide. A chief climate scientist at Munich Re says that it is becoming extremely clear that the influence of climate change is becoming ever more evident. The United States was the country with the highest weather-related economic losses. Losses in the U.S. totaled $28 billion in the first 6 months of 2022, accounting for almost half of the global economic damage. A series of severe thunderstorms and tornadoes were the main causes. The Asia-Pacific region also saw $22 billion of economic damage, a figure higher than usual. This was mostly caused by extreme rainfall and floods in Australia, as well as a powerful earthquake that struck Japan in March. In Europe, extreme heat and wildfires are believed to have had a big impact, though exact figures were not revealed. The International Labour Organization has also warned that work-related heat stress is projected to reduce global total working hours by 2.2% and global GDP by $2,400 billion by 2030. South Korea has also suffered from extreme weather events. Prices of agricultural products jumped by over 8% on-year in July, as production volume declined due to the earlier-than-expected heat wave and rainfall in early June. The Hyundai Research Institute says it is highly likely that there will be even bigger price hikes if there is more extreme weather in the coming years. Experts say climate change poses one of the biggest risks to the global economy, and that stronger protection is needed as the majority of people remain uninsured against natural disasters. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
On a light note now, capital Seoul has launched an inaugural summer festival that city officials hope will take firm root as an annual event attracting locals and tourists alike. Our Song Yoo-jin has some of the related sights and sounds.
Welcome to Seoul Festa 2022. Hosted by the Seoul city government, the festival, first launched this year, welcomes guests from all around the world for some summer fun. But on top of providing fun, the city had its sights on a bigger cause.
The tourism industry has been going through a tough time due to the COVID-19 pandemic, so we prepared Seoul Festa 2022 with the hope that this could not only boost the tourism industry, but Seoul City's economy as a whole.
And the first day was filled with eye-pleasing spectacles. First stop was the exhibition area, providing a sneak peek of what transportation in the future will look like. On display were a variety of personal air vehicles that could someday become a familiar sight on the city's skyline. There was also a VR zone where visitors could feel as if they were riding in one themselves. Seoul aims to commercialize an urban air mobility service which would allow passengers to take to the sky in these vehicles by 2025. But the highlight of the day was the evening's K-pop concert, Super K-pop Live. Around 40,000 fans from all around the world gathered at Jamsil Sports Complex to cheer for their favorite artists.
I was really disappointed when NCT Dream's last concert was canceled, so I'm really happy to finally see them today at Seoul Festa 2022.
I'm super excited. We haven't gotten to see them for quite a while between, COVID and touring and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to support the group.
Yeah, so excited. This is all I've been looking forward to lately.
The 2-hour-long performance featured more than a dozen renowned singers or groups from different genres. Crossover vocal quartet Forestella was the first to take the stage. K-pop idol groups including LE SSERAFIM, NMIXX, Stray Kids, and NCT Dream followed. Singer and After Rain rappers Tiger JK and Yoon were also part of the lineup. Although it rained, the bad weather couldn't dampen the passion of the artists and the audience. But these are only part of the fun that Seoul Festa 2022 offers. From Wednesday to Sunday, a wide variety of activities will take place across the city. They include the Global Electric Car Race, the Formula E World Championship, the World DJ Festival, as well as shopping and leisure activities. Those interested can find more information on the Festa's official website. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there's been an attack on a prison. Dozens of armed militants attacked a prison in the city of Butembo on Wednesday and freed over 800 prisoners. 5 people were killed in the jailbreak, including 2 police officers. Local authorities say that at least 80 individuals stormed the prison during a prisoner transfer, leaving only 58 inmates of the original 874 behind. A spokesperson for the DRC army blamed a militant group called the Allied Democratic Forces for the attack, saying that the rebels struck after learning female prisoners affiliated with them would be transferred. The armed group has been active in eastern Congo since the 1990s and is known to have ties to Islamic State. It's also responsible for a number of massacres and previously staged a prison break in 2020, freeing over 1,300 inmates. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has reshuffled his cabinet amid falling approval ratings and ties to the Unification Church. A new cabinet was introduced on Wednesday, replacing 14 of the 20 members. This follows polling showing that the previous cabinet's approval rating had dropped as low as 46%. It also comes as Kishida attempts to distance his administration from the controversial Unification Church. Several of the previous cabinet members had ties to the church, which had been connected to fraudulent activities. This reshuffle is the second in only 10 months since Kishida was sworn in. Now commenting on the move, the PM said all new cabinet members have agreed to have any links to the church reviewed and will help victims of fraudulent religious organizations. A drought in Germany looks set to make the Rhine River unusable for supply boats. German water and shipping authorities have predicted that by Friday, water levels at a key section of the waterway will drop below 40 centimeters. That would be too low for barges carrying coal and oil upriver. This will impact Germany's ability to fuel its power plants at a time when gas supplies are being squeezed by Russia. Barges have already needed to cut cargo loads by up to 50% to pass through shallow sections. Germany faced a similar situation in 2018 when Rhine water levels hit a record low of 25 centimeters. Lego is celebrating its 90th birthday with a unique birthday cake. Made up of over 94,000 pieces, the Lego cake was revealed on Wednesday at the Lego house in the Danish city of Billund. The cake has 9 layers, each representing a decade of Lego. To mark the day, events were held at stores all over the world. Lego first started in 1932 and began producing today's well-known bricks in 1958. The company now produces 100 billion bricks per year. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good Thursday afternoon. Now the rain in the capital has nearly petered out, but it's still raining on and off. Now Jeollabuk-do Province is expecting torrential downpours with a heavy rain warning in place. The rain may be accompanied by stormy conditions. And as the rain front moves southward, Jeollabuk-do Province will see the bulk of rain with up to 120 millimeters, and Chungcheong-do and Gyeongsangbuk-do Provinces will also see up to 100 millimeters of heavy rain. Accumulated rainfall in Seoul has already weakened the ground, so even if it's not raining heavily today, reinforcing vital structures is a great idea. And southern regions will have to deal with oven-like heat, while many of heat alerts on the Met have been lifted already. Feels like temperatures are even hotter, hovering around 33 degrees in some areas. The rain will subside tomorrow morning, but pockets of heavy downpours are expected, so keep an eye on your local weather forecast. And there's another round of nationwide rain from next Monday. Now, let's take a look at the worldwide weather conditions.
And those are the top stories at this hour. We'll be back with more coverage on Friday. See you soon.